Well, good evening to you. Great thanks for joining us. It's time for Family Matters, and our conversation tonight is based on the ruling delivered on, that is about last week Friday, actually. Last Friday, about 1, Judge John Mativo delivered what you would call an earth-shaking ruling. FIDA had filed a case in court seeking to reverse a particular clause that talks about sharing matrimonial property equally. And that, of course, was the principle of equal sharing of matrimonial property upon the dissolution of marriage, or what you call divorce, and regardless of what an individual contributed. That is what FIDA wanted the court to grant, but, well, it did not grant. Well, we would have wished that we have a female voice in this conversation, and sure we had, until about 5 minutes ago when lawyer Juliet Nyang'ayi called in and said because of a small misfortune that has happened to her, she will not be able to make it to the show. So it is not that we want to have a masculine conversation. We would have actually wanted to have that voice completely, but then 5 minutes ago, the lawyer called in and said she will not be able to make it. And of course, we wish her all the best in her situation as it is. But then again, I'm joined by lawyer Evans Ondieki. Yes. He was an active participant in the matter, and he will tell us on which side he was vouching for. And we also have Nderitu Njoka from Maendeleo ya Wanaume, not as Brenda had baptized him as Maendeleo ya Wanawake. It's Maendeleo ya Wanaume. My name is John Jacob Kioria. The hashtag on Twitter is Family Matters. @JKioria is the Twitter handle. And, of course, on our SMS line, 22162. And, of course, the question for us was, do you agree that matrimonial property be shared equally? Well, it's time for us to start with the conversation. Wakili Evans Ondieki, I saw you in the Supreme Court because this matter was supposed, to generate from the Supreme Court. But then at one point, the Supreme Court says it has no jurisdiction and referred the matter to the High Court. What side were you arguing from?
I will give my expert opinion. Mm-hmm. My point is this. The law has always been that matrimonial property is distributed equally. The Court of Appeal has developed that jurisprudence. Mm-hmm. So, if Justice Mativo moves away from that legal principle or from that jurisprudence, then that becomes a minus because the law had already developed. Then you look at the Constitution, mm-hmm. It recognizes both genders and equality of parties or partners before, during, and after divorce. It recognizes them as individuals who are equal. And then you look at Article 27(1) and 2 of mm-hmm. the Constitution. Yes. It also recognizes equality before the law. So what is the meaning of those values in the Constitution? And those values are reflected in the preamble. They are reflected in Article 10. They are reflected in Article 20. You look at Article 21, Article 27, Article 45, which talks about the family. Absolutely.
So, that is what I wanted to ask you. From submissions you're making here, Article 45, subsection 3, because I quoted it here, and it says, parties to a marriage are entitled to equal rights at the time of the marriage, during the marriage, and at the dissolution of the marriage. Yeah. You're saying that Judge Mativo's ruling is likely to have contradicted the Constitution?
Yeah. Now, it depends on what informed him, but my understanding is that that alone, that provision of the Constitution recognizes that the parties are equal. So we cannot separate them when it comes to property, because women equally contribute a lot. Mm-hmm. You might not quantify their form of contribution. They might be unemployed when you marry them, but they are very hardworking in terms of making sure that the family is happy. Mm-hmm. They make sure that the children go to school. Most of the time, the men are not there. They are drinking or they are working out. And then when it comes to matters of the bedroom, they also make a contribution, a great contribution, to make the man happy. So if you were to quantify, if you were to go to Koinange and you quantify what you pay in Koinange per day, I'm being blunt and honest.
Yes.
If you are being charged 3,000 per day, and then you calculate that on your wife, and you charge it, it's a colossal sum of money. It's a big contribution
on the part of the wife.
On the part of the wife.
Let me come to that.
So,
let me come to that because I don't agree with Wakili on that note. When you talk about contribution, for example, emotional contribution, like you have said, I think it is a two-way issue. The woman too needs emotional also needs to be given emotional.
Or needs emotional support from a man.
It's about sharing. It is not about the woman giving the man emotional contribution.
Yeah.
So I don't agree with
Let me hear from you. This ruling by Judge Mativo, how did you take it as Maendeleo?
One, the issue of 50-50 cannot apply. For example, you've married for just a year, and now the woman decides to divorce for her own reasons, and not really genuine, but because she is after property. Because a research that we did recently showed that 90% of women who are marrying today are marrying and are also interested in the man's property. A woman will not 90%, marry.
That is the research you did?
Yeah.
90% of women marrying men are interested in the property?
Are interested with the man who is of good means, who is of means.
Okay.
Not a poor man, really. So now, the issue here is, now, for example, the man is a billionaire. At the time of marrying. And so that doesn't mean that this woman has assisted the man in getting the billions. He has gone and married this woman, and the woman has entered into marriage, whereas the man already is well up. Now, let me ask you, when it comes to sharing 50-50, where does the woman come in? I think the issue here, the law is very clear. And FIDA, I think they are just busybodies and wasting their time here. Because the law is clear that, you only share according to contribution. What you got before marriage is yours.
Let me ask you.
Even for the woman, because some of our women today are well up too. And I am not expecting a woman who is well up to be married by a man who is not well up.
So contribution to you, Nderitu, is monetary contribution.
Of course, monetary contribution. Because...
Nothing more?
No. Emotional contribution, that is shared. Because both of us require the emotional part of contribution. We are sharing, we are exchanging. It's not the man who needs the emotional contribution. It is both of us. We are helping each other and we are sharing. And no one is helping the other. And in fact, when we came together as a man and a woman, a man and a wife, we became one. So I don't think there is either of us who is helping the other, but we are sharing and we are enjoying life together as a married couple.
Let's hear Wakili on the same, because the point that Maendeleo ya wanaume Chairperson Nderitu is making is, when you talk about emotional contribution, number one, from where you sit, try and tell us, how can you quantify emotional contribution, number one? And number two, isn't it then a matter of reciprocation or quid pro quo, that you need emotional support, same as I also need that emotional support? So would it be discriminating on the part of a man if you were to quantify it to the aspect of emotional support on the part of a woman and not a man?
Let us be honest with one another. First of all, before I answer your questions, I want to unpack what my brother said. The statistic that he has given cannot be correct. That 96% of women go for wealth. That's not correct. If you had the middle class and the top most rich people in Kenya, they can hardly reach 1 million people. So the rest, 42 million people, they are average Kenyans.
Are stuck out with us here,
yes,
right?
And they are leading honest, ordinary life, and they are happy. What we are saying is this. For us to unpack...
But I think the man should be at least working so that the woman should... Let
us unpack this notion so that we appreciate them from a wider context and perspective. Number one, when you come together as equal parties. Each one of you has made a contribution in their own way, no matter how small. By the time you marry at 20 years, each one of you has made a contribution. And you come together and you make a joint effort. This joint effort is committed 50-50 from the beginning. You bring 50% effort, whether it is emotional, physical, psychological, wealthy, material, everything. Now, why should it be less when it comes to separation?
But I think on that note, Wakili, the law is clear. The law is very clear. The law is very clear on that.
I think
and you will just hold it that, because you will argue your point, right?
Yes. The law is not cast on stone, number one. Because the Constitution has already declared the principle, the constitutional principle, that men and women are equal in terms of before, during, and after divorce. It has that's what the meaning, the spirit of Article 45. Then when you read that Article 45 with the other articles, Article 10, Article 27 of the Constitution, which are of general application, then you appreciate that value in the Constitution about equality. So what we're saying is this: society for a long time has been favoring men.
It's a patriarchal society, right?
Yes. So you find that properties devolved to men. You find that people gave shares to the boys. You find that people gave education to the boys and forgot about the girl child. So generally, women were disadvantaged by the institutions and structures and cultural beliefs that were prevalent. But the new constitution in 2010 tended to bring all people to be equal. And what we are saying is, this has to be brought into reality by the judiciary, by the courts. So when a judge goes and pronounces a legal principle of general application, and he says, no, women have to they have to justify their contribution for them to get a share.
But not only women, also men. Women, a woman or a man.
A woman or a man, yeah. But he knows that constitutional principle he has pronounced will be used against women because the society is patriarchal and it tends to favor men more than women.
Absolutely.
So we're saying the pronouncement by Justice Mativo is not a plus. It's not a gain in terms of human rights jurisprudence, in terms of feminism jurisprudence. It is a minus. Because now we are moving retrogressively instead of moving progressively towards realization of these rights. So what we are saying is this: what is wrong in sharing equal with this woman you've always claimed you loved? What is wrong?
But I'm assuming at the point where you divorce, you no longer love each other.
No, but we are saying divorce is just a hiccup. But the bottom line is that these are two parties who have loved one another.
Tell me something, Wakili, because you call it a hiccup, but I'm assuming why courts grant divorces because of irreconcilable differences.
Yes.
So how do you call that a hiccup?
No, what I'm saying is this. You can admire a person. Then you go home and you find he removes his panties and leaves them in the sitting room. That becomes an irreconcilable difference. We cannot change. Let us be honest. Basic mannerism, rules of honor.
Careful, so, in the watershed period.
Yes, because if somebody cannot change his attitude and mentalities to suit the other party, then it becomes difficult to relate. And then divorce becomes the next course of action. But if somebody is flexible and ready to reform. So if you used to brush your teeth with a stick and you leave it there and your party does not like it, you can change and use a brush. Those are small things that you can agree. But what we're saying is this: when it comes to wealth generation, the woman contributes in terms of a contribution in the house, because you have to employ a house girl, a gardener, a security to guard you. But the woman sometimes, most cases, guard this home, prepare the food.
No,
even if she's unemployed.
Let me ask this. Let me ask this, Wakili, and ask you. Now, are we talking about the property that you got before marriage, or the property that you got when you were married, during the marriage?
I'm talking about the intrinsic contribution by the woman, which cannot be seen immediately. But if you take your time and you unpack these concepts about where it is.
Hold on a minute. The question we are asking tonight,
the
question we are asking tonight, on 22162, which is a big question tonight, is that should couples share property on a 50-50 basis in case of a divorce? Should couples share property on a 50-50 basis in case of a divorce? 22162 is our SMS line. On Twitter at KBC Channel 1 at Kioria, the hashtag #SFamilyMatters. You ask Wakili Ondieki what property he's thinking about when he talks about sharing property. I would want to know from you, what property do you have in mind?
I think.
And which one do you think?
This is now the property that is maybe acquired, maybe monetary property. For example, a house, maybe plots or land. And this man or this woman had the property before marriage. And the law is very clear that the property that you got before marriage is yours. Now, how comes that now the law wants to twist that the property you had before marriage can be shared equally?
Don't you think
whether it is a property of the woman or the man? Which woman will accept her property to be shared equally with the man? Because they have been married for 1 year, and it is the woman who had acquired that property. This is, you know, now the time for taking the rights of men for granted, or even the rights of women for granted, is no more. If I had property, and I've married, and we are divorcing, maybe for a year, after a year, then I think the property I got before marriage is mine. Or the property that the woman got before marriage is hers. And I'm telling you, men have no problem with property. I'm telling you, I have not come here to say that men have a problem with property. Because, for example, if women today, they share maybe inherit land, for example. Yeah. And we have never heard of any man going back to the wife's, parents, to claim for land that the woman had maybe after death. Yeah. But you see, women go to even their parents to claim for land that the husband had. So men have no big problem with property. What they want is security. Security is that if you had property, if maybe the woman has contributed, we have no problem, we men.
Let me ask you, Nderitu.
Yes.
Even if you've been married for 2 years, and then you happen to divorce, and you say you had acquired property even before you got married to this woman, but 2 years down the line, unfortunately, you have to divorce. You don't think there's any contribution on the part of a woman?
The law is very clear. The woman,
this law is very clear.
The law is very clear. No. The law is very clear because it says that the woman can go and show the kind of contribution that she has given to this relationship. And I'm sure that any magistrate will hear and will say, for example, even the matrimonial home, that is for the woman because of the kids. So I think there's no need of now coming up with a 50-50. It is now like making a general ruling on all divorce matters, which is unconstitutional. You know, every case should be taken by itself.
Wakili, there's something interesting that Judge Mativo notes here in his ruling, and he says that what you're likely to do is open floodgates of litigation where people will walk into marriages for convenience because what they want to do is have a rip-off after 1 year, you know, or 2 years. People will be walking into marriages with the sense that I want to get property from this man. And that in itself
or from this woman.
Or from this woman, for that matter. Don't you think that in itself was a genuine fear from the judge? That was a genuine observation?
No. There's no basis. There's no evidence to support that proposition. Because if there is anything that is going to happen like that, then the courts have the capacity to deal with them. Number one, you can have a prenuptial agreement so that before you enter into a union, you have an agreement that the properties that you had raised before will belong to each party independently. Then if you trust one another, you can always come together and join all the efforts. And number three, the Constitution and Article 258 and Article 20, it is very clear. The basic value that informs the judge should be that he opens the law, but not to close it. The Constitution has given him power that where it comes to enforcing the rights of individuals, you do not degrade the basic character of that right. What he has done, he has totally, structurally damaged the character of the right of women to inherit property on equal basis, because he has now made a judicial pronouncement.
Men or women? It should not be like this ruling was for women against women.
It can be either gender.
But it was done by a high court. Why should we say against women?
And what we are saying, this is the danger now. This is the risk he took. The risk is that that ruling of his is because it came from a constitutional court. The presumption is that the constitutional court has heavy weight in terms of pronouncing what the law is. And he has gone ahead and done that. That will have serious implications and the ramifications on the enforcement of women's rights in Kenya. So that is a minus. And that's why we are saying that is a wrong ruling, and it has no place in a democratic Kenya where women are the majority.
Wakili, are you telling me that it is impossible that there are people in this country that can actually get into marriage for convenience because they have already identified a jackpot?
Now, let me ask you, before you marry, you engage, you court. The presumption is that whoever you are going to trust to marry, you have done your background checks. You can even go to the local chief and ask, who are these people?
What about gold diggers?
You can go to the judge. You can go to the church and dig the background.
Yes.
So when you enter into a union, the presumption is that the third party that is entering into this union has done background checks. So we cannot say that the people are going in to dig or to speculate about property. The presumption is that if you look at the state guarantees families. If the state is guaranteeing families, then the court cannot go fundamentally against that guarantee, where you make a ruling that makes it very difficult for women. Because let me be honest with you, women do a lot of work.
Why should you say
maybe
women?
Maybe you should be told the work that women do. Hold on.
Yes, women do a lot of work. And as I've told you, take a woman in the rural area. She goes to the river to draw water. She brings water. She goes to the buying center to take coffee or tea. Then she comes back, she makes food. The man is busy on the road, conversing with stories with his colleagues. He comes for lunch.
No, working.
He goes back.
Working, not conversing, reading.
Okay, I'm giving a typical situation, because don't take one case, take the general case that it could affect many people.
But you should say the man is working, not just chatting out there.
Okay, say
the one who is
the
man is the one who is providing, not just chatting out there. Why should you downplay
you and
the
I
role of
know
the man?
that there's a crux of men in the rural
Who
areas
do nothing.
who are not providing for them.
They do nothing, and they want everything from the woman.
Exactly.
Then when it comes to divorce, you are telling the woman again to go to the same man and leave all the property.
Not all men. No, you cannot generalize.
That
all men are given food by women. No. Men are very productive, and men are they actually in the forefront. Even
no, I don't even finish to analyze it. She goes now.
So you can't say that
she has come from the buying center.
Just idle. No,
she has made food.
She was quantifying the work that a woman does.
Per day. I'm quantifying per day. So she has made food, lunch for this gentleman. She goes back in the afternoon, she looks for...
And the man has been busy working and has brought the food.
All right.
She looks for burger, she comes back, she makes dinner. Are you seeing? If you quantify how much dinner costs in Serena or Hilton, any basic dinner, it's 2,000 shillings, average. Then this woman again, after all is over, there is some expectation from the bedroom on the same day from the same man. So if you quantify all this...
But could you write this for both of us? It's not for a man.
You make your point.
Yes. It is for both of us. It is not the man who only requires the conjugal.
Okay, I want you to hold it.
So I was trying to contextualize and unpack what it really means, what women go through to make these men comfortable and happy. So it is a lot of work. If you quantify it, it's about $200 per day. That is 20,000 shillings per day, what women goes through. If you quantify
meaning
that...
daily they're investing about 20,000.
20,000 to this man daily. If you quantify that by 26 days...
What about the man?
26 days.
You can do the math yourself.
Yes.
You're from my let only
yes. If you do that, it comes to $4,000 per month. Women invest in men. So in terms of
men are donkeys. I will not agree with you. Men have been donkeys for a long time. And I'm telling you, men have played a very big role in even bringing up families. I am telling you, don't downplay the role of man. Men are out there, because I'm representing them, they are not for 50-50. But for the woman who has contributed, I am telling you, men have even given their wives
Tell
gifts.
Me, Nderitu.
Even
Tell me.
props,
Hold on a minute.
even
Nderitu.
they have no problem in sharing property to their wives.
Quick question for you.
Problem.
Wakili at least has quantified for us that a woman invests about 20,000 Kenyan shillings daily into a man's life or into the welfare of a man on a daily basis. From your quantification, how much do you think a man invests daily?
Let me say this. Like I said earlier, that a man has been a donkey for a long time. Man has even assisted even the relatives of our wives. of the wife.
Of the wife.
Even helping the friends of the wife. And I'm telling you, men have played a big role. 50-50 is no problem with the person who has contributed, but not just the person who has come into the marriage for 6 months and wants a share of your rentals. Really, is that fair? Say, for example, these rentals are for the woman. Is it fair for a man to come into marriage and then share the rentals after just 6 months because they have been in a marriage? I think the dangerous marriages that we have are what we call the church weddings. Those ones are the most dangerous weddings. I mean,
You have a problem with church
I
weddings?
have a big problem because there is no reverse. If you have declared, you cannot go back. But can
My
we stay?
answer to that is simple and straightforward.
Can we stay, Alvin?
But can we
Let me
stay also marriage?
No, let me tell you. This. Take this marriage of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry.
Yes.
Meghan Markle was worth $10 million. That's 1 billion shillings. But she has forfeited that and assumed the role of a princess.
Duchess of Sussex.
She has sacrificed. Marriage entails sacrifice from both parties.
That's true.
It entails sacrifice because the value that informs marriage is bigger than money. It's not just about money. It's about eternity from God. It is God who ordained marriage and blessed it and made it holy. And then he said, a man should leave his parents, get married, and cling to this wife forever, for the rest of his life. So that is a value that you cannot quantify in terms of money, in terms of resources. So when men just want to simplify marriage as about materials or about money,
I think
they are
it is
becoming
not men.
simplistic.
It
That's
is
number one.
women who are doing so.
I want to finish
Men have no problem
my
with that.
illustration. My illustration. So what we are saying is this. You see, men are forgetting that the society has favored them. The law has favored them. The culture has favored them for many, many centuries. Many centuries. More than
you're talking about the last century, maybe? Because
No, more than 3 millennium.
the boy child is endangered. The man is endangered. When it comes to laws, everything. The man is in shits, I'm
Go
telling
to
you.
Pakistan. If a lady befriends a man before
In
she's
Pakistan.
married, she's killed because it is called honor. Are you seeing? That is how serious it is. You've seen it in Southern Sudan, you've seen it in Sudan, you've seen it in Pakistan, you've seen it everywhere. So what we're saying is this, don't just make general statements. These are serious issues that we need to interrogate properly and appreciate. And I'm telling you this for sure. Men have to come to this reality that the constitution we enacted in 2010 is a constitution that recognizes a woman as an equal partner. So this business of subservient women, slaves that you keep in your house, or some people that you misuse around, it should die.
Obviously.
Naturally.
It should stop. But Nderitu, what I want to hear from you is, because the point that is being made by Ondieki is that there's a lot of investment going into marriage, particularly from a woman. Are you trying to downplay that?
No, I don't think Mr. Ondieki is himself, because he is speaking in terms of law. But if we go out there, he is not going to say the same thing. I am telling you.
What I'm saying, I can defend anywhere, even in court. And that's why I have said Justice Mativo, his pronouncement has been misunderstood. And it will have a very negative effect on women's rights in Kenya in terms of property. And I can tell you that. And let me tell you, Nderitu, you have daughters. You have daughters, you have sisters, you have aunts, and you have a mother. No matter what, these are all women. And if these women are recognized and appreciated, our society will move forward. But the moment we take women as tools or sexual tools,
I don't think that is. I don't think what you're saying.
That is the implication of the ruling.
No. I will not agree with you. This is a high court ruling. And it was not made against women or against men. It is a general ruling.
No, but you say it is just now that FIDA is a busybody. FIDA has developed the law on women's rights.
Whatever the case, now even if they are doing
an
appeal,
a great work.
We are going to bet. If the ruling, the appeal will not go anywhere.
Let's move this
we will appeal. We will support the appeal. and we fight it to the Supreme Court.
But we are also going to be enjoying the case.
I mean, Njoka, let's move this forward and talk about Clause 6 of the Matrimonial Property Act. And tell me whether, with the argument you're making, whether this act, and particularly Clause 6, is favorable to women, because it says, for the purposes of this act, matrimonial property means the matrimonial home or homes.
That's it.
Household goods and effects in the matrimonial home or homes, any other immovable and movable property jointly owned and acquired during the subsistence of the marriage. You and I know well, from the continent we are in the patriarchal society that Ondieki talks about, most of these things are done by men. So if what is captured in clause number 6 is what is going to be, for a woman to be entitled to get a sharing from it, then it means it's a complete rip-off, that a woman is entitled to nothing.
No. Women have shared property. Women have, for example, if you're married to your wife and you have been together, you are a man and a wife. Yeah. You have automatic share to that man if there is no divorce.
Let us be realistic.
If there is no divorce,
the effect of mativos is that you have to provide evidence of your contribution.
No.
Yes.
For example, in case of death, all your property is for your wife, is it? Now, but when divorce comes in, that is why the law is serious on that part. Because now, if there is a divorce, then you need to show your contribution. Because we can, and I must repeat again and again, that you cannot marry for 6 months and share my rentals. And
that is what you're up against.
That is what I'm up against.
So if you're married for 10 years?
I think that's something else. That's something else, because surely my wife also has also done some contribution. And I have no problem with that. But what we are doing here is we cannot allow robbers in the name of wives to come for 6 months.
You say robbers?
Of course. These gold diggers, I'm telling you, they will have a wonderful time.
I think we have to respect our women.
And let me say this. Let us set a good precedent to our daughters and even sons, that marriage is not about sharing property. Marriage is about what you said, that it is eternal. It should be. You should live. You should live your life in that marriage. But let us not show that it's about like we are in a battle of sharing property.
Let me clarify this.
Yes.
You see, the effect of the ruling by Justice Mativo is that each party has to prove their contribution.
Yes.
Let us just take the conjugal rights. If this lady every day provides this conjugal rights to this man, how can you quantify that?
What about if this man provides conjugal rights to a woman?
No.
I think you are
Number two. It is not that simplistic. Then number two, what I had already indicated earlier, what the woman contributes that is not tangible. You cannot get it. You cannot get physical evidence to prove that it happened. But she went to the liver, she brought water, because there's no tapped water. She went to the market and she brought food. Are you seeing? She cooked the food. She provided security to the home. Are you seeing? She has done everything else.
I think how do you quantify that?
No, but how do you quantify that? You cannot generate evidence to quantify that. So the court, in pronouncing, making such a general pronouncement, has to recognize and appreciate that women go through so many difficulties.
Wakili, allow me to ask a very general question to Nderitu. And not standing on any side, because this is where Wakili Juliet would have helped us, being a lady and being able to break this down. But like I said, she was not able to make it, and she called in 5 minutes to the program to say she wouldn't make it because of an emergency. But my question for you, Yusim, 6 months, you don't want somebody 6 months later to come and say they want your property to share in your rentals.
Which I had acquired before marriage.
Granted. 10 years, you have no problem if she has invested.
Of course.
If she has invested with you.
Yes.
What if she hasn't?
Of course, the court will rule. Will actually rule, because the law
rules based on what?
No. The law is very clear. I think we don't enter into marriage for divorce. That is something that you need to put off.
But you and I know the rate
Let
of
us not
divorce in this
focus on
generation
divorce.
is just something.
Because divorce matters are not, there is no crisis. You know, so that we can say 50-50. Why? And I think, if I must say this without fear of contradiction.
Yes.
That this appeal is being taken to court by feminists. And that is
But
why
I don't
they're
think
after.
Wakili Ondieki is a feminist.
No, you see, he's a lawyer, and I think he's here to also cater for the cases that he has.
No.
Not for himself.
Hold on, Wakili, because Nderitu, you have not answered my question. You said 6 months you don't want somebody to come asking for your rentals, because in 6 months you say they have not invested anything.
It can either be me or a woman.
Exactly. So I want to ask you, because you're the one here, it's not a woman here,
Yep.
you're the one representing Maendeleo and a woman here.
Yes.
10 years, you said you would be comfortable if they have invested along with you, that in the event of a divorce, to share property with them. And I'm asking you, in this 10 years, what if they have not contributed any monetary, there's no monetary contribution to your property, what would you do? Would you share the property with them?
Of course. Let me give you something. Another
Why?
fact. Let me give you a fact.
No, hold on a minute. You say, of course. Why?
No, let me give you a fact. Women register their property. They hide and register their property under their mothers. That's a fact. No. But men register their property.
Those are general statements.
No. May I finish? Yes. But men register, if it comes to registering their property, they can register. It's so free for men to register their property under their children and even the wife. But women are not ready to register their property under the name of their husband.
Do we have evidence? Do we have evidence to support those propositions?
How are we going to get even the property of that woman? I'm telling you.
Yes.
No. Getting the property of the woman is impossible.
Now, we are in a legal quagmire.
Yes.
The judge never provided guidelines that if the marriage is for 1 year, then the court can take judicial notice of that fact and the reality, and maybe make a particular ruling. If it is for 5 years, it will think differently. If it is for 10 years, we have that lacuna or vacuum. So we are now back to zero, not even square one. We are back to zero. Justice Mativo took us back to zero because the Constitution was very clear that all these parties are equal. But the court now, out of lack of basic understanding of constitutional notions, because constitutional notions and principles is that the Constitution cannot state everything. It is not possible for the drafters of the Constitution to have contemplated every scenario of life. So they stated principles. Then it is the duty of the court in interpreting the Constitution and the law to give it meaning so that it reflects the reality on the ground. And this reality is that you give effect to the right to the best possible realization. But now we are having a situation where the court blocked the right.
Let me be the
and that is the
advocate.
dilemma.
Wakili, let me be the devil's advocate. And it's a point that Nderitu has been trying to make consistently, because marriage should be for good, for worse. It actually should never be there a contemplation of the issues of breakage. And I was looking at Wales in England, because our constitution heavily borrows from England. And in Wales, marriage has no proprietary effect, in that if you're seeking compensation for being in a marriage, it won't happen in Wales. Don't you think we're approaching it from the wrong perspective then, if we want to build families, that the only thing we think about is property and the solution of marriages?
No, I think the principle, the mischief, because there was a mischief the constitutional drafters sought to address. They realized, number one, that women were disadvantaged. Number two, they realized the women are underdogs when it comes to these unions. And then number three is that cultural beliefs and societal norms have always worked against women. So that is why I believe that is the historical context in which that constitutional provision was brought on board. Otherwise, it was not brought for nothing. So now the problem is when the court links that right for women, instead of expanding it, the court has slunk it.
Let me ask you, Nderitu, lawyer.
What do we do?
What's the problem with explaining or showing your contribution to maybe in that marriage so that you can share property. What's the problem with that? Because the law says clearly that you can show your contribution. Why don't you want to show your contribution?
Look at the historical context of the marriage. Yeah. The woman could pledge credit in her husband's name. That's why the woman adopted the husband's name. Even if the husband was in the high seas as a marine, the woman could go to a shop and pledge credit and be given credit. So the bottom line is, look at the values that underpin marriage. Yeah. For many, many, many years, 1,000 years, it is because they wanted to protect the underdog.
In this 21st century, yes. Lawyer, this 21st century, I think women are not that disadvantaged as you are.
But what is the rate of unemployed women in Kenya?
Even if it is high,
we have 6 million,
grown up.
6 million unemployed women.
It has
we have the statistics from the National Bureau of Statistics. We have 6 million unemployed women.
Let me say this. Now, what we are now doing, if it is about 50-50, we are opening a new way of gold diggers, whether men or women. And that is why with the full force of the law, Justice Matigo said contribution.
You're telling me
it is important for you to show contribution.
You wouldn't tell out a woman who loves you and one that does not.
I said earlier that I think it will be.
Or you're saying they are masters of deceit?
No, that's a fact.
Oh my God. No,
give us the figures. If you have facts,
that's a fact.
Give us the statistics.
We need to look at issues broadly, and we need to set a good precedent to our children. Let us encourage them to love one another and be in a marriage full throttle. Not to focus on divorce.
If you love your wife, you love your daughter, you love your aunt, you love your mom, you cannot deny them the right.
How many men have
property?
Been robbed out of their property by a woman who comes in and shares property, and even whereas even the first wife or the second wife goes out in nothing? How many cases do we have in our offices? There are many. And that is why we want people to show their contribution. Today we have a problem of even sugar mummies marrying men, young men who don't own property. Let me finish. Who don't own property? Young men who don't own property, and they have a very big problem.
I think
with these men.
Mr. Nderitu has misunderstood this concept completely.
Let me finish. After staying together in that marriage for maybe some months, the man now claims the property of that woman. It is unfair. It is unfair. It is robbery.
Before Wakili Ondieki poses his challenge to you, I want to go back to the same question that I asked you, and now I will not quantify it in years. For a woman who has stayed in marriage for so long, let's say 15 or even 12 years for that matter, and they have not contributed.
You have already mentioned a clause in the law that says that the matrimonial home is for the woman. That is outright.
That's the only thing they would take.
And anything else that the man would wish to even give the woman. It is. I am telling you,
men
have no problem with giving their women, children, property. Men are very generous. I am telling you. Men are very generous. When it comes to even sharing property
let me tell you,
and even giving gifts, they are very generous.
Power is contagious, and the power corrupts. And if we leave this power or discretion to men, most likely they will abuse it against women. That's why the law comes in to make interventions so that the rights of the other people, particularly women, are guaranteed. Let me ask you, if you love your women, your daughters, your aunts and your mom, what is so difficult? Because you have given them a given lifestyle, which they are used to. And then you want to move away with everything and leave them destitute. Is that love? Let us be honest.
No, I don't think...
It means you never loved these people from the beginning.
No, you have not explained it the way it's supposed to be. Because now, for example, how many women own property today? Property that was of their husband. There are many. Many women have already acquired.
But that's a very small percentage.
As you wind up, let's move this forward, because I was looking at what you would call comparative jurisdictions on the way they have handled matrimonial property. And I looked at America, and there's a law they call Married Women's Property laws, Article 2852, it says all property acquired by either husband or wife during the marriage, except that which is acquired by gift, device, or descent, shall be deemed the common property of a husband and wife. And during the coverture, this time when they're married, may be disposed by the husband only. And that is in America. But back home, it is impossible for a man, particularly now with the laws that we have, it is impossible for a man to dispose land without consulting the wife. That is what it is right now. But in America, a husband can dispose land without even consulting the wife as long as they're deemed marriage. Don't you think ladies in Kenya, and particularly through this, Matrimonial Property Act and stuff, have made what you would call monumentous gains in terms of owning property?
Let me tell you this. The Constitution of Kenya 2010 is a very progressive document. But you must appreciate that the law is not self-implementing. That Constitution cannot self-implement itself. It takes the judiciary, the police, the prisons, the people themselves, and other stakeholders to make sure, to stay vigilant, to make sure that the values and the principles of the Constitution are implemented to the full. So the problem we are having now is that for people who want just to make a public pronouncement that pleases a section of society, that is very, very, very negative in terms of developing this jurisprudence. This is a serious case that ought to have been studied, that opinions should have been sought. Even elders, contribution by elders, including both men and women, should have been called to give their opinions about this concept. Because it's a new concept. We don't have a precedent about it. So when you go and you use desktop to study what has happened in other countries, and then you just come up with a pronouncement and say, no, each party must show their contribution. I think that is very dangerous.
It's taking a direct jibe on the judge. No. I think they did a desktop job.
It is not informed by any research from other jurisdictions.
All right.
Let us be honest.
There's something that you have mentioned.
Yes. Very open critique on the judge.
Here in Kenya, the man must sought consent from the wife to sell a property, but not vice versa. Don't you think that is unfair? Don't you think that is unfair? Women are allowed to sell their property freely, but the man's property you cannot sell without the consent of the woman. Now, are we now going like it's a woman's world or what?
Isn't it bent on history and proven facts that it's a patriarchal society that has really, thrown the woman under the table?
This is a bombshell.
Number two, look at the conduct of men previously. Yeah. Men have other arrangements all over. So really there is a high risk this woman exposes herself to.
Leaving the woman vulnerable.
But you don't find women having other relationships outside their marriage. To be very honest.
What are you saying?
No.
Let us not go to that because that's a very different topic. We have married women who have children who are not of that husband. We have
statistics. We have a lot of men who have several other homes they are managing and supporting. That is why the law should protect the woman, because the woman becomes the underdog in this arrangement, where one party is dishonest, feeding another family without even disclosing to this until you die. That's when people realize, there were several other families. And we're saying, because of that dishonest conduct by men previously, then the law must come in to intervene and protect women.
I think you
it
are
is simple
an
common
agent
sense.
of FIDA. You are an agent of FIDA.
Who is the agent of FIDA?
My lawyer here.
Elio, who's the agent?
No, I'm an agent from...
I'm
been
speaking
by
the truth.
men.
I'm speaking the truth from the way I know it. Yes.
And the boy child is endangered. If this is the way forward, I think we are going...
All right.
We are moving.
Let's take several responses here before we close the program, because obviously it look like we're going to wind up anytime soon. Family Matters, Marriage Divorce Act. Where there's divorce, there's adultery. Sin, which results in death. Would they share death equally? I think that question is meant for you, Wakili. You're talking about most of the times, and this appears to be based much on religion. I don't know whether you saying that most of these cases, divorce cases, are caused by adultery. and the repercussions of adultery biblically is death, would they be willing to share death equally?
No, not necessarily. Let us contextualize that. Most people divorce because of 4 main grounds: desertion, lack of consummation of the marriage, adultery, and irreconcilable differences. So you have to contextualize each case. You have to treat it on its own merit and understand what happened, how it happened, and why it happened. Then you are able to make a proper appreciation of what happened. So we should not just take one isolated case and then we generalize it. Yes.
The story about marriage, divorce, and property sharing is a sensitive issue. People get married and divorced for different reasons. Till death do us part. He line, see jokes. Think before you commit, and that's Kibe. No, it is.
That's why my advice is for come we stay. That's the best marriage.
What was that comment?
I think he's the Kibe just says think before you commit. That's what the bottom line is, just saying think before you commit, because people are divorcing for different reasons.
Yeah, for different reasons.
Somebody says no, if that is the case, men don't need even to pay dowry because we are now equal. Simiyu from Bungoma. How can one share 50% contribution to divorce 2 out of 3 in polygamy? Family matters, the issue of division should not be taken easily because it is sensitive and it can easily become noisy, messy, and with casualty.
Of course, and also raise the gender violence cases.
Gender violence cases.
I'm telling you.
Okay.
I'm telling you.
I think we need to wind up the show, but obviously, again, it's something we will be looking to because FIDA is appealing the case.
Yeah. And I think the Court of Appeal will look at it and make a determination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the same. It will do the same thing.
All right. Actually, just got something here very interesting. There is nothing like equality between women and men. That's a lie. Even God himself is my witness. Then let's not commercialize holy matrimony. This whole discussion of sharing property is poisoning the young generation and sowing immorality. Mama Hotani says women not only contribute monetary, they also play a huge role in advising the husband. Why do we forget that? All right? And somebody says he likes Nderitu's acumen, he's right, but somebody also accuses you of being anti-women.
No. How can I be anti-women and I'm married? No, that's not true. I have daughters. What I care for is peace in the family. Because when you empower the man, I am telling you, you are putting your children, your wives into problem. And that marriage will not last.
We are 3 minutes past the clock.
Yeah.
Why don't we have problems in the Muslim religion? Why do they have checks and balances when it comes to...
They also have challenges.
Not as many challenges as Christians have.
I think there's a discussion we can have.
It's because maybe we have lost our origin. We as Christians, we need to look at that again.
But I think the bottom line is we have to protect women, we have to protect our daughters, we have to protect our mothers.
And men too.
Yes.
All right. We protect men, women, and children.
Okay. Fantastic. This is a conversation we'll continue having. Of course, the Court of Appeal will apply itself to the matter, and we'll see whether it will overturn the ruling of Judge John Mativo. If it doesn't, well, we shall see whether the Supreme Court is the next destination, because it said it didn't have jurisdiction then. But then I think it can have jurisdiction if the Court of Appeal doesn't overturn the ruling of Judge John Mativo. But that's just it for now. Thank you very much for joining us. Your contributions very much appreciated. Thank you very much, Nderitu, for coming. Thank you very much, Wakili Ondieki, for coming. And of course, obviously, we were afraid by the fact that we didn't have a lady, and their voice would be heard, but you have done a fantastic job in terms of defending the case filed by FIDA and why women ought to be respected and particularly honored in this entire deal. My name is John Jacob Kioria.
Men and women need to be respected and honored, not just women.
How do you go through the streets without getting beatings from women?
No. We need to equalize.
Good night, Nderitu. Good night. Stay put. Have yourself a good night. We'll see you around.